I'm Brenda Stedemeyer. I am one of the plaintiffs in the federal lawsuit against the U.S. EPA over the neurotoxicity of fluoride chemicals added to the public drinking water. And back in January, Karen and I wrote a letter to Rochelle Walensky and Dr. Hacker over the emerging evidence of neurotoxicity. And today we're going to go over a letter that we got in response in June, 6 months after our letter that we sent. So, Karen, do you mind giving us a short little bio of who you are?
Sure. Well, I started off my career as a teacher and then did the mummy track. And when I went back to work, I couldn't get a job in teaching, so I ended up working in an office where I discovered I had a facility for computers and sales and research. Well, I've always had a facility for research and analysis. And I became an analyst and project manager, and that's where I got my professional street cred. And then I discovered in 2014 that the decades of illnesses that I had been suffering were being caused or exacerbated by fluoride in the water. So I used those skills to dive into the research in PubMed, and ultimately I was the person who got Erin Brockovich to come out of the closet against fluoride, which is something I'm very proud of.
So we're going to go through this letter paragraph by paragraph. We might take a break in between, and we just want to make some comments on the statements that were made. Dear Brenda Stedemeyer and Karen Spencer, thank you for your letter to the CDC Director Walensky and other CDC officials regarding community water fluoridation and CDC's annual quality awards to water systems that achieve optimal fluoridation levels for all 12 months. I am responding on behalf of Dr. Walensky. For more than 75 years, CDC has carried out a mission to protect America's safety, health, and security at home and abroad. Across our portfolio, CDC is committed to applying the best available science to addressing pressing public health issues so that people and communities can make evidence-based decisions and actions. The commitment to transparency, honesty, and thorough consideration of research outcomes is central to this process.
There is a lot to talk about in that. We agree. We know what the CDC's mission is, and that's why we wrote them. And we agree that honesty, integrity, and transparency should be paramount in what they're doing. And that, again, is why we wrote them. Because if you look at the best available research, and all the available research that has been published, especially in recent years, but going back right to the beginning, it is not supportive of fluoridation. It simply is not. Now, people will say it is. They'll do keyword searches on PubMed and come up with, well, when I started in 2014, 2015, it was 250 studies, 400 studies, 500 studies. Now they're claiming there are 7,000 studies saying that fluoridation is safe and effective. No, they're doing a keyword search. I co-wrote a paper with Dr. Harvey Lineback, which is not supportive of fluoridation policy or of the NTP, which comes up in that search. So, they're just not really doing what they say they want to be doing and that they should be doing.
Mm-hmm. And in that key search, they're basically counting on us to not read those 7,000 journal articles that come up, because many of them are pointing to problems of the kidney, the thyroid,
mm-hmm.
bones,
mm-hmm.
teeth,
mm-hmm.
Diabetes, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, and many of them aren't even about fluoridation. They mentioned fluoridation in passing in one spot in the study, but it's not about fluoride in water. It's not about fluoridation. It's not about human effects or any effects having to do with fluoridation. It just mentions it. Keyword searches.
Mm-hmm. Do a keyword search on hydrofluorosilicic acid sometimes. That's the actual chemical that they're using, or fluorosilicic acid.
Mm-hmm.
Almost nothing comes up for studies.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, they didn't. They accepted some statements based on faith back in the 1940s, statements that came from, that originated with polluters in the aluminum industry, and said, oh, we can sell this as a positive and therefore not be on the hook for pollution. You know, pollution lawsuits about fluoridation were bankrupting companies back in the first part of the century. And that's when they came up with the idea to say, oh, but it can be good for teeth. And suddenly, nobody had a leg to stand on to sue these polluters.
Let's continue on. The CDC carefully and continuously monitors emerging research about benefits and risks of fluoride so that recommendations are based on the entire evidence base. CDC continues to emphasize the importance of community water fluoridation at the recommended level of 0.7 milligrams per liter as the cornerstone of caries prevention in the United States.
Again, there is a lot to unpack there, really. The evidence that is coming out against kidney health, thyroid health, brain health, baby brain health is tremendous. Bone health, oh my word, just in the past few years. And there were always studies about how if you consume this for the duration of your life or over decades, you are going to have bone problems. You're going to have osteoarthritis. You're going to have brittle bones because fluoride is attracted to bone and it will make the bone harder. But if you drop a wooden bowl and you drop a ceramic bowl, which one's going to break? The harder one. It's more brittle. And that's what happens when you're consuming fluoride over a lifetime. But they're not paying attention. And one other thing, and then they talk, the CDC. Who is the CDC? We think that we have all the hundreds or thousands of scientists there working on this. No. We have a small group of dentists and marketing people, whose job is to sell things. Dentists and marketing people, and they're the ones evaluating the safety of brain health and bone health and kidney health and thyroid health. I'm sorry, but I know you have something to say about that whole business about Cornerstone too. This is really interesting.
So the cornerstone, in my humble opinion, should be diet and nutrition. You know, if the CDC focused on diet and nutrition, we would solve a lot of the obesity problems in America, diabetes, all kinds of health problems. Instead, they ignore that. When my son went to public school in Green Bay, there was half of the students came from homeless families, so they got this free breakfast program. They were fed chocolate milk with 18 grams of sugar, Trix yogurt, Cocoa Puff cereal, the first thing when they walk in the door. And then there's an epidemic of tooth decay in the poor community. Green Bay is fluoridated. It's been fluoridated since 1957. No fluoride is doing any good for these kids, and then they have behavioral issues and all these other problems because diet and nutrition is completely being ignored. So I believe the cornerstone of CDC for preventing cavities should be nutrition.
And of course, we both know that there have been a couple of studies, again, in recent years saying, oh, the sugar industry influenced the dental research people in government to turn away from the problems with sugar and to market fluoride as a magic potion. You know, you can have your cake and eat it too, literally, if you drink this magic potion. Well, fluoride is not a magic potion. It is a poison. It's a poison to brains, bodies, and bones.
Okay. Continuing on. Although high amounts of fluoride are harmful, the amount in treated drinking water is low and not proven to result in any unwanted health effects other than the potential for dental fluorosis, a condition that causes primarily cosmetic changes in the appearance of tooth enamel. The 2015 U.S. Public Health Services panel chose 0.7 milligrams per liter to provide the best balance of protection from dental caries while minimizing the risk of potential harms.
Oh boy. Oh boy. Dental fluorosis, harms, adverse effects, that 215 white paper report. In April of 2015, this Public Health Service report through the Health and Human Services did come out, and they said, oh, we're going to lower it from a range of 0.7 to 1.2 to just 0.7. And that will deal with the dental fluorosis. Well, they knew, because they had had advanced notice of it and seen it, that the Cochrane report was coming out. And they were going to say that the difference between dental fluorosis for 1.2 or 1.0 and 0.7 was just minuscule, 41% versus 46%, 12% severe dental fluorosis versus 15% severe dental fluorosis. And it's not just mildly cosmetic. If your kid, if your permanent teeth have brown stains on them, you might put up with it and talk like this when you're a kid, but when you're an adult, you're going to get costly crowns and veneers to hide that. Mm-hmm. So this was such a put-up job. But the big thing is, we emphasized in our letter, in our attachment, studies published after 2015. So for them to dismiss that there's nothing, no adverse effects, which did exist, because the 2006 National Research Committee said, well, we found a lot of studies suggesting that there were issues beyond dental fluorosis, but, we don't have quite the detail, and we were only asked to comment on the goal, to say whether it's safe or not. Well, we say the goal is not safe, the maximum contaminant level goal is not safe, but we need more studies. Well, we have the studies published after 2006 and after 2015, and that's the due diligence that the CDC should be paying attention to, and they're not.
Yeah, I saw recently the amount of dental fluorosis in the United States in children is up to 70%. And then I have a lot of friends who are brown colored, and so when they have dental fluorosis on their teeth, it's more prominent, it sticks out more. So the white spots, they're more self-conscious of their white spots. And so like when they smile, they don't like to show their teeth when they smile and stuff like that. But then there's also studies that find that the fluorosis could be an indicator of IQ loss or permanent brain damage.
Absolutely. Well, the fluorosis, if you see visible fluorosis in the teeth, it is proof positive that this individual had excessive amounts of fluoride while young. Now, Mr. Hannon, who is the social marketing communications expert in charge of the oral health division, who's promoting fluoridation so aggressively, might not understand the difference between concentration and dose. But Dr. Walensky and Dr. Hacker, who both have MDs, should understand that if a person has diabetes or kidney disease, or who is an athlete or who works out and drinks a lot more water than typical, then the concentration is one thing, but their dose is based on their intake. So you can't conflate and say this is a safe concentration when you're not talking about dose, and individuals get different doses, and the doses that they're getting are proven to be excessive because of the dental fluorosis, which is visible signs of poisoning during youth.
And infants and children don't have the kidney function that an adult has. So their body cannot excrete fluoride as well. Just like somebody with kidney issues. And there isn't an indication, there is research finding that infants in the United States have high levels that exceed the recommended daily amount.
Oh, absolutely. Dental researchers who are very pro-fluoridation have looked into the diets of the typical American 2-year-old and found, they're getting excessive fluoride in their diet that are exceeding the safe levels that we think are safe. They're exceeding it. Many American youth are exceeding this. We see the proof. We've got even the dental researchers saying it, though they don't want to say it, but that's what the data is showing them. And they're saying, well, but it's not the water's fault. They're getting fluoride for someplace else. Well, 75% of our exposure to fluoride comes from our municipal water. And if you buy foods made with the water, processed foods, drinks, sorbet ice cream. I don't drink dairy ice cream. I'll have sorbet, but I can't have that because it's made with sorbeted water. I'm going to have problems. Anything made with fluoridated water is contaminated with fluoridated water. So these children don't have a chance.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of our foods just naturally may have higher levels of fluoride. I understand tea has high levels of fluoride naturally. Mm-hmm. Grapes, because of the pesticides contain fluoride, have high levels, and other stuff.
So if you think you're giving your kids a healthy snack by giving them grapes or raisins, you're giving them a lot of fluoride. You know, that this isn't safe. You know, boneless poultry. Go figure. Boneless poultry, not poultry necessarily, but boneless poultry is high in fluoride. Has something to do with the way it's being processed. But there's so many obstacles to figure it out. And if you want to brush with fluoridated toothpaste, more power to you. But you need to know, and there is science before 2015 and after 2015 showing that when you use dental products that are fluoridated, you are getting systemic exposure to fluoride. You're absorbing it into your body through the soft tissues in your mouth.
Okay, so the objective of CDC's Community Water Fluoridation Quality Awards program is to commend water operators for achieving the highest level of quality, care, and consistency as they provide an important service to their communities.
Oh, well, let me start and then just quickly hand it over to you. We have a water operator near here who wrote a letter and said, from all those years, I had to add fluoride to the water, and it made me heartsick because I knew it was a poison, and I was hurting my neighbors and friends and family by doing this. But I had to do it. It was my job. I'm adding this fluoride to the water, and it ate me up inside to do it. And this stuff is poison. It shouldn't be in the water. But you are a water worker, and you have a lot more experience than just that.
Yeah, I know a few people who, one operator won't even drink his city water because of the fluoride. He has different health issues, and his doctor recommended avoiding fluoride. And then I have another operator who left the water utility side and went to wastewater because he was so angry that his general manager or director of the water utility would not get rid of fluoride because of the dental pressure. So he's in wastewater now. But there's a lot of operators, you know.
Oh, I know several myself in other states who have become activists. They have to deal with it, and they look into it. Perhaps the average person just wants to say, my dentist say do it, so I'll do it. But the water workers, they have to handle this nasty stuff, and they start looking into it. Anybody who really looks into it, who has any degree of integrity, will say this is a bad thing.
Well, the operators, they're handling this chemical. It has to have its own storage room. It can't be with chlorine. Sometimes they have it grandfathered in that it's with chlorine. It should not be with chlorine. It has to have its own room. So that's more space that they have to have on their building. And then if you look at the room, if you touch the walls, they're just powder. If you look at the glass, they're all foggy from being etched up. If you look at any of the metal in the room on the wall sockets or anything, it's just completely rust from being eaten away. They can't have electrical panels in the room because the fumes will eat away the wiring because it's so corrosive. And then some people have said that, you know, the chemical guys that drop off this chemical said, you know, they've spilt it on their boots. It's just eaten through their boot and they didn't realize it. Or they've dropped off the chemical to a utility and they notice that there's a weird crack on the floor. And when they look closer, they notice that there was a little drop that would come off of the hydrofluorosilicic acid tubing. And it would just continually drip and it just ate away the concrete. So it eats away manholes, concrete, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah. Now they'll say the dose makes the poison, but that was the opinion of an astrologer an alchemist from like the 1600s, for heaven's sakes. Scientists today are saying the timing is even more important than the dose. Dose is important, and the CDC and Dr. Hacker and Dr. Walensky should know better than to conflate concentration with dose. But it's also the timing. So the dose and the timing for giving this stuff, a glass of fluoridated water, to a 200-pound man is going to have a different impact than giving it to a 95-pound woman who just became pregnant, or a 80-year-old woman with osteoporosis and kidney disease. Mm-hmm. So the timing is really, really, really important here, and that's what modern scientists are saying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and infants get the highest dosage if they're bottle fed with tap water.
Oh my God. They only drink liquid, and if they're getting tap water made formula, they are wildly exceeding the safe levels. And no wonder their teeth are not just white splotches, but brown streaks and black spots. And dental fluorosis is not nice. And it might not be affecting everybody, but it is disproportionately affecting the environmental justice community, as you mentioned before. And that includes black people, brown people, indigenous people, and low-income people who are struggling to put food on the table. And now they have to go and buy water.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the NIH has been funding some of the best quality studies since, I don't know when they began funding it, but it began to be published in 2017.
Yes.
And all of those studies find fluoride lowers the IQ.
Yes.
Some of the studies find it increases ADHD. ADHD is rampant.
Yes.
If you look in the school systems, it's a huge problem.
Yes. It might be hard to say, oh, I don't know if my kid's IQ would have been 5, 10, 15 points higher if I hadn't had fluoridated water while pregnant. But if you've got a kid with ADHD or any other learning disabilities, you sure as heck can imagine how life would have been better if he didn't have that. Your child did not have that circumstance. Mm-hmm. And these studies are being done on large prospective cohort groups of, thousands of pairs, of hundreds and thousands of pairs of mothers and children over a period of time. And they have been consistent. And even under deposition, scientists put on the spot from the Office of Water, EPA, and all over, and independent, have said the best science we have shows that fluoride is a developmental neurotoxicant, a baby brain poison when the exposure is in the womb or during infancy or early childhood. Mm-hmm. But that was mostly after 2015, so Dr. Hacker refers to the 2015 as the proof that it's safe.
Mm-hmm. And recently, EPA has dropped their their health advisory levels of PFOA and PFAS significantly. And one of the things that based their drop was a lower birth weight in children. Mm-hmm. And, a couple weeks ago, a study came out that was funded by the NIH, finding that children exposed to fluoride during fetal development had lower birth weights. They were not as long.
Yeah, they're smaller babies in fluoridated communities. They have significantly lower IQ. Now, some might have 5 points lower IQ, others might have 10 points lower IQ, who knows individually. But on the big scale, looking at the big groups, you do see more learning disabilities, more problems with that. And using government data again, we find that teenagers who grew up in fluoridated communities have markers indicating that their kidney and their liver function is a little bit off, and that they're more likely to have kidney and liver disease as adults.
Yeah, come on.
This is all published since 2015.
Yeah. Regarding your comment on the NIEHS draft National Toxicology Program monograph on the systemic review of fluoride exposure and neurodevelopmental and cognitive health effects, the National Academy of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine panel stated in their recent review that, quote, much of the evidence presented comes from studies that involve relatively high fluoride concentrations, end quote, and that, quote, the monograph cannot be used to draw conclusions regarding low fluoride exposure concentrations, including those typically associated with drinking water fluoridation, end quote.
Oh, how much time do we have on this, Brenda? Typically, when a study goes for peer review, the peer review is not published. And the peer review by the National Academy of Sciences there didn't focus on the evidence of the data. They say that right in it. We don't really have looking at the data or the evidence or whatever. We just want to make sure that there is real clarity so that people on both sides of this, the pro-fluoridation people and the anti-fluoridation people, will both agree that it was really done well, even if they still are on different sides. Well, that's not going to happen in human nature. Now, the big thing is, I believe there were 29 studies that were deemed to be high quality, 27 of which found significant evidence of harm.
I think 13 of them were done at levels of 0.7 and below, which should be the focus.
15 were 0.7 and below, and 2 out of those 15 were equivocal. They weren't significant. The other 13 were significant. But the National Academy is right when they say the NTP isn't the one who makes the decision about safety factors and concentrations. That's the job of either the EPA or the FDA. So they're using this out of context in a totally inappropriate way.
And their conclusion of that NTP report was that, quote, NTP concludes fluoride is a presumed neurotoxicant hazardous to human health. And they mentioned the level of 1.5, which EPA has an uncertainty factor for harmful chemicals,
right,
which is a factor of 10.
Right.
So that would make the safe level of fluoride 0.15.
Right. And that uncertainty factor can even be multiplied for highly vulnerable groups like pregnant women. So in other words, even accepting that 1.5 is dangerous, and don't get hung up on the words presumed, because that is the highest concentration, that's the highest status that they can give it, short of intentionally giving this poison to women and not giving it to other women and then measuring the IQs of their children, which would be unethical. So this is the highest proof positive that we can get that this is harmful to children. And if you apply any uncertainty factor, even the minimum of 10, you have destroyed the idea of fluoridation. But it's not the NTP's job to do that, or the National Academy of Sciences. It's the job of the EPA or the FDA. And that's why Brenda is a named plaintiff in that Tosca lawsuit, and I'm a member representative for the Food and Water Watch.
So they list 1.5 milligrams per liter as being harmful. Well, all you need to drink is 2 liters of water to get that exact same fluoride dosage.
Which pregnant women, diabetics, kidney patients, athletes, outside workers, people such as myself do every day. And some of us, I'm a crunchy granola type. I like to make a lot of homemade soups, and I'll do beans, I'll soak the beans, I'll change the water, I'll let the soup simmer all day, I'll keep adding water. As I keep adding water to my food products that I think are healthy that I'm making, the fluoride does not burn off. It's not like chlorine, it's not like a lot of other things. It becomes more concentrated. So again, Dr. Hacker and Dr. Walensky, you know the difference between concentration and dose. You don't give somebody a bunch of pills and say, oh, the concentration is such and such. Take as many as you want, whenever you want. We won't worry about the dose. Oh, and you can do the same for your children and for your elderly mother and whomever else. This is a huge deception that is being foisted on the American people by people who are vested in protecting fluoridation policy.
It's terrible. So CDC and the U.S. Public Health Services guidance on fluoridation has always been based on the best available science, diverse perspectives, and a careful consideration of research outcomes. We are committed to continuing to monitor the available science to ensure that communities can benefit from water fluoridation while minimizing any possible risks.
Well, in our letter, Brenda, we mentioned Dr. Grandjean's benchmark dose analysis, which was something that needed to be done, that wasn't done by the NTP. It wasn't done until 2021 to further say that fluoridation is dangerous. And that was one of the reasons why they said, well, you can't say fluoridation is dangerous, you don't have a benchmark dose analysis. Well, he did it. And he found 0.2 is dangerous. And you just recently said 0.15 would be a reasonable safety point. Well, it's all aligning. All the science is coming together. But we're only talking about neurotoxicity right now. We're not talking about other things. And so he came out with that in 2021. So this is the best available science published since 2015. And we mentioned that in the text of our letter, and we sent her an annotated bibliography with approximately 100 studies published after 2015, focusing mostly on low concentrations of fluoride, fluoridation, thyroids, kidneys, bones, brains, colons, all kinds of bad effects. So it was very disheartening that she picked and chose how she was going to dismiss us by avoiding the major points, which really was you shouldn't be rewarding people in water departments for doing a bad thing. Doing it well, doing what they're told to do, but it's still a bad thing. That is driving some people out of the industry because they realize it is a bad thing.
And Casey Hannon from the CDC was deposed in our lawsuit.
Yes, he was.
And he said that CDC doesn't have any information on fluoride and safety for infants, susceptible populations, all kinds of people.
Yep, he admitted, well, it's not the CDC's job to do the science. Apparently, it is their job to promote fluoridation.
Yeah, it is very well funded from the CDC. They give out many grants to states for upgrading fluoridation equipment, giving out their participation awards, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, so there is money involved in promoting fluoridation.
So basically, we just made this video to bring awareness to what we're dealing with in regarding to our communication with the CDC. So I hope this helps change something somewhere, or it's a great archive for the historians after fluoridation is banned and they wonder how could this have gone on for so long.
Well, you know, Brenda, I've said that fluoridation poisons us womb to tomb because when the mother drinks it, it just saturates the amniotic fluid, it gets into the baby's brains, and then, you know, as you drink it over the years, it gets into your bones, and in between, it can be damaging your kidneys and your thyroids. Thyroid disease is leading illness in this country, and 1 in 7 Americans are going to have kidney disease at some point in their life. You know, IBS is diagnosed. We have so many diagnoses, excuse me, in this country, which are really misdiagnoses of fluoride toxicity. And we would love to applaud the CDC We would love to say that they are upholding their mission of looking at the best available science and protecting the health. But they haven't been. They are using social marketing and communication gurus to make issues go away by citing things that are out of date and misquoting things out of context, which is just not representative of a organization that cares about people.
Thank you.